Hey there, Larry Richardson here with today's edition of Common Sense News, August the 27th, 2019. Today is the first segment of a multi-segment edition here, which is going to discuss and cover the word groups of person, people, and inhabitants in one group, and citizen and naturalized or naturalized in the other group, as far as these words appear in two documents, the Constitution of the United States, including the preamble, and the Declaration of Independence. Now, the reason I'm doing this series is because there's a lot of misconception out there about how the Constitution applies to individuals as to whether just people or whether specifically citizens, etc. So we're going to look at this in the overall view, and then we're going to zero in on some of the specifics in subsequent and a couple of more segments here before we finish this thing. We try to keep each one down to about less than 5 minutes. Let's start with just some basic numbers. Now, in the Declaration of Independence, which of course is one of our founding documents, it precedes the Constitution by a few years, but in it, the word people appears 11 times. Now, two of those 11 times, the wording of inhabitants is used where it means people. The same things, 6 one, half a dozen of the other. And the word citizen appears only once in the Declaration of Independence. That's about a 10-to-1 ratio. Now, in the Constitution, the word person, people, or inhabitants, which appears once. The person, people, and inhabitants, that word and that word group appears 57 times, of which 49 are still active. Now, what do I mean by active? It's simply this. When a word appears in the Constitution, that segment of the Constitution has subsequently been replaced by something one of the amendments has done, then that particular segment, that paragraph, sentence, or whatever, is no longer an effective or active part of the Constitution. Now, out of the 57 times that the word person, people, or inhabitant appears in the Constitution, including the preamble, I think one time or two, 49 of those are still active. So 8 times those words appear, they have been superseded by either being rescinded or amended. Now, the word citizen and naturalized, as it applies to people, as it applies to a citizen, appears 24 times, 21 of which are active. Now, what's the difference between the ratio of basically 2-to-1 in the Constitution, 2 times as many mentions as people, persons, than there is citizenship things? Whereas in the Declaration of Independence, it's 10-to-1. 11 times the people aspect and 1 time the citizen word. Now, here's the difference. The Declaration of Independence was a collective document. In other words, it was a document that applied to the collective people of the 13 colonies, and their collective declaration that they were proclaiming themselves free from the governorship of England, whereas the Constitution is a collection of the states forming a federal government and placing parameters and limits around that federal government's ability and authority to affect the individuals and the states that make up the federal government. So the Constitution applies a whole lot more to individuals rather than the whole group, whereas the Declaration of Independence was about the whole group of the 13 colonies. So having said all of that, let's prep you up and kind of get you whistle a little bit wetted for the next segment coming out tomorrow. And it's going to focus mainly on the Constitution and the aspect of voting. Citizenship, people, voting. There's some misconceptions and there's some wrong ideas that a lot of people have. Hopefully most of you watching this are already sharp enough that you know most of this stuff, but it wouldn't hurt to take a peek at tomorrow's episode anyway. By the way, don't forget about Sound the Alarm Brigade. It's going to take somebody to force the politicians to face the issue of Sharia encroaching our society. That somebody has to include you, because if you're waiting for somebody else, I tried one time, I looked in all 50 states. I did a search in all 50 states, and there is not one single person in these United States that I could find that was called somebody else. So if you're waiting for somebody else, it ain't gonna happen. www.ourstab.com. Have a great day.